You know, the greatest strategic failure is this belief that a large purchase requires some massive high-pressure pitch to close a skeptical buyer. But what if that's all wrong? What if the entire battle is actually won at the very beginning with a single small yes? A yes that psychologically pulls the buyer toward that final big purchase. Today, we're diving into a framework that applies this exact principle, not just to sales, but to the entire structure of a successful business. We are talking about leading versus lagging metrics, and how understanding this difference is the secret to actually controlling your future. Let's get into it.
So, this idea is really our starting point. We tend to assume that big outcomes need big, forceful actions, right? That we have to push a customer into giving us the result we want. But this quote, it just flips that whole idea on its head. It suggests that maybe we're focusing on the wrong moment entirely. We're all looking at that final decision, when in reality, that decision was probably made way earlier, secured by a series of smaller, almost invisible agreements.
And really, this is the central question for us today. What if the key to massive growth, to a motivated team, isn't about chasing that big final outcome at all? What if it's about mastering the small, controllable inputs that make that outcome pretty much inevitable? That's the journey we're on. We're going to take apart the common way of thinking and replace it with a much more powerful model for control.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll kick things off with the small yes paradox. Then we'll diagnose what I call the problem with history. After that, we'll introduce leading versus lagging metrics, dive into the psychology of control, give you an actionable framework, and wrap up by showing you how to actually predict your future.
So, let's start with that initial hook, because this isn't just some clever sales tactic. It's a really deep principle of human behavior, and understanding it is absolutely crucial, because the same logic that gets a customer to say yes is what gets an entire organization aligned and executing on its goals. It's all about focusing on the first domino, not waiting to see the last one fall.
You see, this domino effect is rooted in some really powerful psychological drivers, the foot in the door technique and our own commitment bias. We all have this fundamental need to act in a way that's consistent with our past selves. So when we agree to something small, like a free sample, a quick demo, or downloading a guide, it actually establishes a new little identity. We're now the person who's interested in this. So when the big request comes later, it doesn't feel like a high-pressure decision. It feels like the natural, logical conclusion to a journey we already started. The battle was won way back at that first low-friction yes. Just keep that concept in your back pocket.
Okay, so how does this small yes idea apply beyond a sales call? Well, it shines a spotlight on a huge problem in business. Just like that salesperson focusing only on the final close, most businesses are obsessed with measuring the final outcome. They are focused on history, and frankly, that's a losing game. They spend all their time analyzing the dominoes that have already fallen instead of figuring out which ones to push next. And this brings us to our first key definition, lagging metrics. I want you to think of these as your business's autopsy report. They're fantastic for telling you what happened in the past, the final score of the game. Things like revenue, profit, customer churn, all vital numbers for sure, but they all share one fatal flaw. By the time you measure them, the game is over. It's history, and you can't change it. Let's make this super concrete. Let's say your quarterly revenue report comes in low. What can you do about it? Well, nothing. The quarter's over. The actions that led to that number happened months ago. The chance to intervene is long gone. Same thing with your churn rate. By the time you see that 5% of your customers left last month, they're already gone. Or picture a factory floor. The lagging metric is units failing final inspection. By the time a unit fails, the steel's been cut, the parts have been assembled, the time has been spent. You can't undo it. Focusing on history like this creates a culture that's always in reactive mode, always fixing problems that are already in the past.
So if looking backward is the problem, the solution has to be looking forward. And this is where we introduce the core idea of this entire explainer. We need to shift our focus from the results we can't change to the activities we can control. We need what I call a predictive value filter. This right here illustrates the fundamental shift. On one hand, you have lagging metrics. They're historical outputs, they're hard to influence, and they only tell you what happened. But on the other hand, you have leading metrics. These are the real game changer. They are predictive inputs, things your team can actually control today. They don't just report on the past, they predict the future. This is the move from being a historian of your business to being the architect of its future.
Let's ground this in reality. A marketing team's lagging goal might be leads generated.
Instead of just staring at that number every month, they should be obsessing over their leading metrics, like landing page load speed. Why? Because they can improve that right now, and they know that a faster page directly leads to more conversions. For a sales team, the lagging goal is sales closed. But the leading inputs they control are things like demos booked and time spent in follow-up activities. They can't just magically close more deals today, but they absolutely can book more demos. Or think about a software team. Their lagging metric could be the number of critical bugs in production. What's the leading metric? It might be the percentage of new code covered by automated tests. They can control that input before the code ever gets released to predict a higher quality output.
So the really crucial point here is finding inputs that have high predictive value. And this isn't about guesswork, it's about using your data. You need to establish that real quantifiable link between the input and the output. I mean, when your sales team knows, with confidence, that for every 10 demos they book, 3 new customers are closed, everything changes. Measurement is no longer a historical report card, it becomes a reliable forecast. You can look at your demo calendar for this week and actually predict your revenue for next month. That is what gives you real strategic control.
Now, this whole framework isn't just about better data or strategy, it's really about people. The shift to leading metrics works so well because it taps directly into the core drivers of human motivation and performance. It literally fuels the human engine of your organization. Let's break this down. First, you've got control. Judging a team on a lagging metric like profit margin is so demotivating, it's just too far removed from their day-to-day work. But measuring a leading metric like customer response time empowers them. They have direct control over it. This creates actionability. Instead of feeling paralyzed by a bad quarterly report, they know exactly which levers to pull today. Think about the difference in a team meeting. The old way is, why was churn so high last month? The new way is, hey, our onboarding completion rate dropped 5% last week. Let's figure out why and fix it today. This directly boosts motivation because people see that tangible link between their effort and the company's progress. And finally, it creates cognitive alignment. Everyone understands why their specific task matters. A developer isn't just reducing page load time, they are generating more qualified leads because they know that predictive link. That kind of clarity is what drives incredible performance.
All right, so we've covered the what and the why. Now let's really get into the how. This isn't just some abstract theory, it's a practical, actionable framework that you can actually implement. Let's translate all these insights into a clear path you can follow. There are 3 essential steps here. First, translate. You take every major lagging goal you have and you break it down into 2 or 3 leading activities that directly influence it. Second, define. Now this is the hard part. It's the data work. You have to establish the verifiable predictive link. What's the real ratio between that input and the output? And third, and this is maybe the most important, you have to enforce. This is a cultural shift. You must start prioritizing and rewarding the performance of the inputs, not just celebrating the final results.
Let's look at a quick example for step 1, translate. A super common lagging goal is to increase customer lifetime value, or LTV, by 10%. It's a great goal, but how do you actually do it? Well, you translate it into leading inputs. You do some research, that hard define work, and you discover that customers who fully complete your onboarding process and use a key feature, your magic number, a certain number of times in their first week, are way more likely to stick around. So your new leading metrics become onboarding completion rate and magic number frequency. All of a sudden, your product and success teams have clear, controllable missions that directly predict an increase in LTV. And now for step 3, enforce. This is really where the rubber meets the road. It requires a pretty radical shift in focus. You have to mandate that 80% of the time in your meetings, in your reviews, on your dashboards is dedicated to the performance of leading metrics, the inputs. What's our demo booking rate this week? What's our ad relevance score? What's our test coverage percentage? Only 20% of the time should be spent looking back at the lagging results. This forces the entire organization to focus on what they can control to build a better future, instead of just dwelling on a past they can't change. And that brings us to the end of our journey, and to the final, essential insight of this entire framework. We've gone from a simple sales paradox all the way to a complete system for organizational control. And it really all boils down to one simple truth. That's it. Prediction is superior to history. You cannot change the past, but you absolutely can influence the future by structurally focusing all of your energy, all of your resources, and all of your measurement on the controllable inputs, those leading metrics. Your business gains the power to reliably forecast and shape its own outcomes. You stop being a victim of circumstance, and you start becoming the author of your success. And this is just the perfect way to wrap it all up.
This system works because it aligns with a fundamental truth. You don't force results, you create the conditions where the results become inevitable. Just like that first small yes, you focus on the inputs that pull people, both your customers and your employees, toward value. So the final question really isn't whether you're measuring enough, it's whether you're measuring what actually matters. Are you measuring the past, or are you measuring the inputs that predict your future?